Asteroid of fear.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And on today's episode, I have JJ Flizanes, and we're going to talk about what it means to be an empowerment strategist. And we're going to talk about some laws of attraction, core wounds, how that relates to manifestation and success in business, and kind of how she teaches the law of attraction differently. And this is kind of something that I'm certainly interested in because, like I told her, I am learning some of these things about myself for sure, about core wounds and self-worth versus self-belief, and what I can do to kind of heal some of those and move forward. And so this should be right in line with uh, the values that I hold and the listeners hold. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Richard, can I ask you a question about your audience and what you think they come to your show for?
I want to say that they come for the stories of others, maybe listening and kind of understanding that maybe they're offered a different perspective so they can ask a question of themselves and hopefully explore how this relates to them. And, I think they come and they're kind of lessons, but also sharing how we're all similar and some of the things that we go through and how other people cope, how other people um, how they display their resilience and kind of move forward and get over hurdles. And so a little bit of everything. It's kind of mental health focused, navigating the chaos of everyday life.
Perfect.
That's the last line in the description. So it's because my journey to this point was rocky and
Hmm.
kind of out of necessity, and taking things into my own hands and just deciding I I want to be better. I'm going to do better and move forward because my background is I was laid off 9 months into the pandemic after doing healthcare for 12 years, and it was brutal on me because it was very much a part of my identity. Because people who care for others, I think it's who they are, not necessarily what they do. And my identity was torn down a little bit, and I drank a lot, just was not the best person, father, husband, all that stuff, not the best person to myself. And there was some point I just had enough and decided that I would move forward, and starting a podcast was something that gave me direction. It was kind of like a personal journal. Um, People hearing the struggle that I had and kind of what I did to get through it. And, you know, part of that. And once I was able to start interviewing guests, it kind of became the same thing as, telling these stories of what troubled somebody, how they got through it, or, if you're unfulfilled in like a corporate job, maybe you just take that chance and go for it, whatever it is that truly fulfills you, and that's why I say kind of for me, getting laid off was a blessing, um, because I don't know that I ever would have went for it. Um, if not, because it was a normal career, because I'm Gen X, I'm 48, but my mother's 67, and so our views are different. And me being a people pleaser and always wanting to please, I have the college degree, I did all the stuff, and could probably have a quote unquote normal life as it relates to what our parents wanted for us. But it's just not me. I wasn't fulfilled. I attempted to get other jobs, but I don't really think it would have been any good because I would have really just been transferring one unfulfillment for another. Because it was really it's the corporate structure and the politics involved in any sort of corporate structure that just aren't me. I don't really do politics, and if I have something on my mind, I'll say it. Whether you're the CEO or the housekeeper, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, the truth is the truth. Um, and I feel like I should have a right to ask questions it shouldn't be offensive just because you're above me or whatever. So, but yeah, enough about me. Let's talk a little bit
Well,
about
no,
you.
I wanted to set that up. I wanted you to set that up for me
Okay.
because, as the Men of the House podcast, I have to be honest and say that I want to make sure that everyone's sort of in the right mindset to receive what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because most of the time when men hear the word emotions or wounds or therapy or right, like it's almost it could really trigger you to think, oh God, I don't want to dive down this. This is uncomfortable. This is unnecessary. I don't need to deal with my emotions. I need to have more money. I need to whatever. And I always sort of give the analogy for all audiences, but especially when there are men in the room, that when I say emotion, women go, "Oh yeah, my emotions," and men usually go, "Oh, I don't like that word. I don't want to talk about that word." But if I say stress, men go, "Oh
Oh.
yes, I'm stressed." Like you can identify with that. For some reason, it doesn't make you all twirly and want to run the other direction, because most of us, it's almost like a badge of honor.
Hmm.
And so, but I need everyone to understand that stress is emotion. That
Well,
stress is
and I do have quite a few female listeners. It kind of flops 60-40 back and forth at different times. Sometimes it's more female listeners. So the Men of the House is actually based on the Waffle House, me sitting at the Waffle House next to other men going, what do we have in common? Why are
right,
we here? We're all
right,
alike. So let's explore our alikeness and help each other get through stress and emotion, as opposed to letting it destroy us or battle against each other.
right. Well, it becomes a reprogram. So
Hmm.
one of the things that we don't understand or realize is that most of our subconscious mind became programs when we were young, from this time we were born in time. And this is going to link into core wounds, because most people don't know what that is. And your core wounds are all the beliefs that got created between actually 6 months into a pregnancy, 3 months before you were born. So the first 3 months the last 3 months in utero, and then the first 7 years, because your brain is in a theta state and a delta state, not in an alpha state. So those brain waves, the theta wave is kind of hypnosis. So because a child is just recording and going around the world trying to figure out what the rules of how to live, how to survive are, and they can't discern if there's a choice of interpretation, everything is fact. And so what happens is we create all these programs that become our subconscious, and then we live those out for the rest of our lives. And
Mm.
we don't even know they're there. So when we try to make changes in our lives and we find ourselves, it's hard, we can't do it. We, in some areas we excel, in some areas we fail, and we don't know why. And we've tried talk therapy and we've tried a million things and it isn't working, is because we haven't learned how to identify and then reprogram that pattern.
I didn't
So,
realize it went back that far in utero. I knew I know about like attachment styles in the first 18 months, but I really didn't know about that kind of like age 7 and the in utero part. And I find it interesting for myself because I was almost lost 3 times before I was born, and then I was premature in the NICU, and then at 1 I got burned and spent 3 months in a burn unit where my parents had to handle me through a box. And so, yeah, it's a little bit enlightening to go, man, I really have some work to do.
well, you had a lot of traumas. So what
Yes.
probably that means is and again, I don't know you very well, so this isn't a judgment. So please
Hmm.
don't take this as a judgment, but you probably don't feel safe in the world. And when we don't feel safe in the world, then we can't heal, we can't thrive, and it blocks us from receiving all the things that we want, because we don't feel safe to receive them, because we think that maybe the other shoe will fall, or that I don't deserve this, or something bad is going to happen. It's an upper limit, and it gets created by these core wounds. So in the last 3 months in pregnancy, it's whatever stresses that the mother's going through. It's whatever stresses you as the baby is going through. If your parents were fighting, if your mother was not feeling well or unhappy, that all gets embedded into you as you're creating your brain and as your body is responding to stimulus. Because again, it is about survival for the first 7 years. Past seven, around seven, between 7 and 8, your brain comes online, and now you're conscious and you can discern when somebody is saying something to you and they don't actually mean the words they're saying. They're just trying to motivate you, or you can discern the difference between, even though someone's angry, they still love you. But depending on, again, whatever wounds get set up in the first 7 years, in 3 months. And then,
Mhm.
and those are things that most of us aren't aware of. And one of the things, so you asked me to share a little bit about like sort of how I got into this work.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so I was a personal trainer for 25 years in that. And before that, I was an actress. And I'll tell you that while they didn't seem to fit before, and I thought, well,
Mhm.
these things don't really fit, how they have come together to fit perfectly is that when you do a good acting class, and there are plenty of bad ones, and what I mean by that is when you actually study the art of acting from the Stanislavski, no, yeah, Stanislavski original, and then you can move to one of the 5 teachers that kind of spread the word of his work. Although in their ways, one of the teachers I had worked with, a descendant of one of those teachers, and taught me a very specific kind of acting style, which was about living the day in the life of, learning about the circumstances and the environment and the stimulus and the really the vibration, the frequency, the feeling tone, what like the story of
Mhm.
your character, because there are other acting styles that tell you just to go, well, if the character's upset, then you generate a feeling and you cry, think about your dead dog. I'm like, wait, hold on. The character is not me. If all I'm going to ever do is get on stage and then reenact my own life with different words, first of all, that's boring. And second of all, it doesn't feel very artistic, doesn't feel right. So I learned that this sort of style of acting taught you how to look through someone else's eyes, which I can say I think most people are terrible at. They do not know how to do that. They do not know how to look at life through someone else's eyes because they only know their story. They only know their interpretation of life. So move into personal training and looking at the body. And I'm a truth seeker. So I love to learn. I love to find systems. I love to learn science. I love to make sense of things and just had a lot of questions. So I kept learning. I found law of attraction in 2002 or 2001. And that made complete sense to me, resonated instantly. But then I did learn, and I have since then learned the science of quantum physics, which is
Mhm.
law of attraction. So it's not a belief system. It's not woo woo. It's science. It's physics. In fact, I just got back from Mount Shasta with Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who was teaching the honeymoon effect. And I mean, all his slides are about cells and signals and and mitochondria and the nucleus. And I mean, literally, like, it's all science, the whole thing. And he explained, and I've done it multiple times before, but I got a few things out of this last one that I hadn't gotten before. So it's all science. So I learned all this, and then I started manifesting the life that I wanted because I understood I was in control of that before I would do it and not know that I was manifesting. But now when I understood, when I was conscious about it, I got to take responsibility. That's another word
Mhm.
people don't really like,
Yeah.
but it really is. There's only 2 ways to be in this world. One is to understand, and I have the science to prove it, but you don't have to believe me. So I'm not pressing this on you. If you do not want to believe this, that is your right, and I respect your right to not take this. However, I have the science to prove that you are the creator of your own reality. Now, some people are going to hear that like I heard it the first time and almost wrecked my car while I was driving when I heard it. I thought, oh my God, this is good news. Because if I don't like something, I get to change it. Now, on the flip side, some people are going to hear that and think, well, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask that to be raped. I didn't ask to be divorced. I didn't ask to be beaten. I didn't ask to come into this family. I didn't ask to be poor. I didn't ask to be sick. And I understand that. And until we understand sort of the broad perspective as well as the minute by minute sort of choices and programs that you've been in
Mhm.
your whole life, that because I believe that we do choose to come back and to be here because our soul is energy. So what happens when you die? I mean, you work in healthcare, and everybody has people in their lives who have passed on. When you see somebody who has died, do you not understand on a very deep cellular level when you look at that carcass, that body, that they're not in there? They're
Yeah.
not in there. They usually look very different once the soul has removed, like left the body. I was 16 when I first saw my first dead body. It was the priest at the church, and I walked up to the casket and I went, "That's not him. He's not in there.
Mm.
He's not in there." Right? He is a spirit, is a soul, is energy. And so, what do you think happens to our energy? Well, it doesn't go away. So
It's neither created nor destroyed.
it's neither created nor destroyed. So what does that mean? It means that our soul is like a broadcast, like a television show. And if you break your television, do you just think the broadcast is over? No, you buy a new television and you get the broadcast back online again.
The
So
broadcast is there whether the TV works or not.
exactly, exactly. And that's who we are. And again, this is science and I can prove this, but if you don't want to believe it, that's fine. But if you can take full responsibility for choosing this life, because here's what happens. I think it feels better. Let's say we don't know. We don't know. We're still here. We're not dead. Most of us haven't had a near-death experience. We haven't talked to God necessarily directly or whoever you believe in or nothing. So you don't really know. But let's say you die and then you find out. Wouldn't it have been nice to just play out the, well, what if? It feels better. It feels better to believe I'm in control because then I feel better. Empowerment feels better for me to say, I have chosen this. Why? Well, I'm supposed to learn something. Oh, I'm supposed to connect with somebody. I'm supposed to have that child, even though I divorced that person. Because I love this child. I'm supposed to move to this other town because I met the love of my life. I'm supposed to go here and have this bad thing happen because it changed my whole life for the better. If we believe that we're the creators of our own reality and we have responsibility, then we have power to do something about it. So that's one choice, is to accept full responsibility at all times, even for the things you think you're not in charge of. That doesn't mean you're blaming yourself for them. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean shame yourself. I don't want anyone to feel badly. This is about empowerment, not shaming, not blaming. Now, on the other hand, the other way to look at life is to be a victim and say that,
That's what I
well,
was thinking.
yep, nothing. Yeah, I didn't do that. I have no control. Doesn't matter.
I didn't
That
ask for
happened to
that.
me. Right. And you can choose that. And sometimes it feels good at the start to choose victim mentality, but it never feels good long term because you're powerless. Literally, victim means powerless. And if you stay in powerless, you're never in control, although you're never in control. And every bad thing that keeps happening is because you're in the state of, well, I guess, I'm not in control. I'm not choosing this. Things are just happening. And that doesn't feel good. So again, whether or not, let's say victim is true, it doesn't feel good. And I have lived in both sides of that. And I'll tell you, empowerment feels a lot better
Oh
because you
yeah,
can do something about it and you can see better results.
but it's more proactive.
It's more proactive. It makes you feel, I'm doing a course right now, a beta. Every time I come up with a new course, I kind of do a beta. So I tell my audience and my community,
I'm in the process of doing that now for an
right?
accountability group.
Yeah, because you want to test it out. You're not sure how it's going to go, so you charge a little less, and you're going to, next time, and you do this beta. And I have one person who's in there right now. It's called Date Your Body. It's about getting rid of body shame and committing to ourselves and creating a new relationship with our body. And again, as a personal trainer, as a
Yeah,
background, like that fits because I've done
I
that for
love it.
25 years.
I'm practicing self-love right now. So because I have low self-worth from way back. And so I love that. I look at myself in the mirror and for 1 minute each day and try to compliment myself, or at least say, you're worth it. You are of value. Even though you don't feel like it sometimes. So yeah,
Awesome. Good. Well, can I add one more thing to that practice?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at yourself, are you looking at yourself just as a whole person or are you looking into your eye?
Varies. Sometimes I look at my eye, sometimes I look at my jawline and my features, and point out the good parts of them.
So try and
Hmm.
whenever for maybe however long you're doing this,
I
try
still got to
for,
do it today, so I can do
okay.
it after this.
So do it into one eye and,
Okay.
and each day, like rotate because sometimes it's going to
Oh,
be easier into one eye versus the other, but I want you to focus on one eye and say the affirmations, say the things you believe, say the things you want to feel. I do Ho'oponopono and tell clients. So whatever you're saying, whatever mantra you're saying, look directly into one eye. Don't go back and forth. Stick with one eye for one time. Then the next day, do the other side because one side is going to be easier than the other. And when you determine the one that's harder, that's the eye to focus on.
oh. Yeah, because I'm actually starting to realize, like, I was listening to this podcast and it was about a Navy SEAL, and he was talking about how he was right-handed and always shot right-handed, but whenever he went through some sort of training and realized they were telling him, like, you need to shoot left-handed because your left eye dominant even though you're right-handed. And I realized, like, what feels more natural to me is left eye open.
Me too.
Like it feels like my stronger eye, like I don't have to try. And I was like, because I grew up in the country, shooting guns, I was like, maybe next time I shoot a gun, I'll try it left-handed to see. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that. But what's the reasoning behind it?
Oh, the hemisphere of the brain. your left
Okay.
brain being
And so
more
focus on the
linear and
one that is
masculine,
more,
and your right
okay.
brain being more feminine and expressive and emotional. And because we usually have one side dominant to the brain, and we usually have one side of the body that gets more ailments than the other side, which is a call to action to deal with and to balance and to attend to the other side, sort of the weaker side. So it'll just teach you something, and it'll penetrate faster and more deeply when you can look at the eye
I
that's
got
not
left
comfortable.
eye dominant. I always have sciatica on my left side. And
Yeah.
when I go upstairs or when I jump, I'm always left foot forward as first step. But I'm
Yeah.
right-handed.
Yeah.
Man,
Well,
I've learned so much, and we've only been going a few minutes.
we'll try it out and let me know
I
how it
love
goes.
it. Yeah, I'm going to.
Um,
Believe me.
so in the Date Your Body group, I've
Uh-huh.
got a very new client. She's very new to me. It's her first time. She's been listening for a while, but she's her first time doing something. And I have this feelings and needs list. So talk about empowerment. And you said it feels better to take responsibility. And so we're using it because she's new. So she hasn't done this exercise with me. And I recommended her using it to figure out what her feelings are, because people will go to overwhelm and say, well, I'm overwhelmed. And they'll stop there. I'm like, well, okay, well, what's the need that's not being met that's creating the overwhelm? Like, if you just stick with the feeling, you don't have the solution. So we're just going to swim in the bad feeling for a while, which isn't really going to help you. So how about we problem solve the feeling so we understand why it's there, so you can get rid of it by doing something about it. And so she did it and came on. So what the groups all do, Marco Polo, along with like a text chain, and then we do group meetings and stuff. And she came on and she said, oh, I love that exercise. She's like, it just felt so good to know I could get my need met. And again, it's the simplest thing, and I can teach it here if you want me to. It is the simplest. No, let me take it back. It is the simplest thing. It is not easy. It is not easy because we are so used to blaming everybody else, the government, the world, whoever, our partners, our children, our parents, for why we are feeling the way we're feeling. And we never really take responsibility for getting that need met. We're waiting for someone else to change their behavior. So when you understand and you practice and you can prove to yourself that you know how to feel better and get your need met without anybody else, there's a sense of confidence. There's a sense of peace. There's a sense of feeling safe because you have your back, and you no longer run the program of that I'm only safe if everybody else behaves in a way that makes me feel safe, because safety is internal, not external. Yes, we get our, parts of our brain. We can go back to the caveman brain and to the, to the reptilian sort of brain of subconscious. And yes, if you feel unsafe because, like, for instance, where I live, there's a mountain lion that got sighted about 12 hours ago, about 2 miles from here. So of course I went outside and I got my only cat that was outside, and I brought her in because I thought, okay, because I don't want to worry. I don't want to
Right.
not, and that's right. I don't want to be distracted by wondering and looking out the window and saying, hey, is there a mountain lion in my backyard? So I brought her in. Okay. That's following my impulse. But we often overthink and overcomplicate and go down deep, dark holes of stories that aren't true because we never stop to get it fixed. We never take responsibility for it. So it's a really interesting lesson. So I agree. And this is the pitch to say that feeling empowered is the only way to live, because now you're going to get what you want. And yes, there are times you're not going to, but then you can figure it out. You can understand it instead of being a victim to a story that's probably not even true that you tell yourself that keeps you stuck in this emotion.
Yeah, one of the things that I've started to notice about myself since I've kind of embarked on a journey of self-discovery, self-improvement, becoming the truest version of myself, is that, you know, I'm typically I've always been kind of a runner. Change the place or move away from it.
Avoid.
But yeah, and here lately, the past year and change has been sit in it and figure out why. And I mean, I had a spell this past week. I had a lot of stress in my life, a lot of emotion in my life. And, I was triggered. Somebody said, what's wrong with you? And it just triggered me. All of a sudden, I'm like, I don't think there's anything wrong with me. Why do you assume there's something wrong with me? And then I became defensive. And then all of a sudden I was in a bad mood. But the thing is it takes the sitting. The only thing I hate about it is I feel like it takes too long. I would like to be able to process, understand why I feel it, and pivot and move into the empowerment direction much sooner. I feel like it takes me a little bit to connect what's the real core reason I don't feel the way I want to feel? That I feel disturbed, uneasy, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's definitely difficult to sit in it. And especially if you have family, a spouse, and stuff like that, because it can be a little off-putting. And I tend to be an isolator, which is terrible too. And and I know these things, and it's like, well, that's the time you should be leaning into reaching out to people. But at the same time, it's kind of a conscious decision to really sit still and quiet and really try to figure out where the root cause of this emotion is coming from that's making me feel this way or causing me to behave a certain way, that's unpleasant to me or those around me. So yeah, so trying to get through the process faster of figuring out that emotion is a goal of mine, as I continue to do this because, you know, then I feel guilty and ashamed for subjecting those around me to that isolation, that's going on while I try to figure it out.
Well, there are two parts to this, and if you're okay, I can share the
Absolutely.
handout and we can
That's
talk
what we're
about.
here for.
So there are two parts. And when I have a course called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing. And that's the first course that anyone takes when they do my Rewiring Your Core Wound Pattern or Evolving Beyond Your Story course. It's like it's 6 month, 3 or 6 month course. And this Date Your Body might go in the front of it, which makes it 9 months. But nonetheless, we don't get to core wounds until the Rewiring Your Core Wound Pattern um, program. But if someone was to buy the Roadmap course, then you'd get it in there. And I teach this at the start of every minus Date Your Body, at the start of every course, because it is simple and it isn't easy. But if you keep coming back to it, when you're triggered in the moment, it doesn't matter because you're once you learn your core wounds and you understand what to do about them and how to rewire them and how to stop perpetuating them, it doesn't happen overnight. You've been doing this for a long time. And so sometimes,
Mhm.
and not to mention there's a ton of programs. So it's like one thing at a time. So we deal with one thing at a time, and then you start to rewire that program and that pattern, and then it sort of naturally kind of goes away. Then you move to the next one. And it's about kind of stretching, just like going to the gym, right? You don't go to the
Right.
gym for a while, you go to the gym, you work out, you feel sore with the whatever exercise. Like today I went down in weight 5 pounds for my chest press because I haven't done it for, I don't know, 4 weeks. So
Oh,
I
wow.
thought, yeah, I probably could do 20s, but I don't want to do 20s. Let's go with 15s. That might be enough. Next time, like next week, I'll go back to 20, but I need the first day to kind of gradually get me back in again. So we understand that concept when it gets to exercise. We have to stretch the body to say, hey, oh my gosh, I'm going to controlled failure. I'm not comfortable. That way the body goes, oh, you need to build more muscle, or you need to lose some weight, or you need to get stronger. If we don't get to that edge, and it's something you can complete, that's why women, if you're a woman listening to this, which is why most women are terrible in the gym. I mean,
Mhm.
men don't know form, but at least they know how to push themselves. Women go, oh, I just don't want to use, I want to use a little bit of a weight. And I say, right, well, then the body has no reason to change. If you
But
can
we push
complete.
ourselves out of like competition and ego.
Right, but it ends up working physiologically. It doesn't work
Yeah.
structurally. It might hurt your joints. Like, so I'm not saying I think men are good with form.
Yeah.
Women are probably better with form, but not with the pushing because they don't like to feel uncomfortable, or they think they're going to get huge, massive muscles by using a stronger
Mhm.
weight, which, hello, that never happens. In fact, the higher the
Mhm.
weight, the smaller you get. You get leaner, which actually makes you look thinner. So
Yeah.
anyway, as I digress, because I do love that world. Took
I
me a
was a
long time
trainer
to
as well.
retire.
I worked at a gym, as an undergrad with a health and kinese degree. Thought I would go into practicing medicine, took healthcare law, said no way. Ended up becoming, I was a trainer and all that, and then ended up getting into emergency medicine and healthcare administration and stuff. But I still go to the gym. And even though I had that knowledge, I ballooned up to 213 and I'm back down to 165. But it's taken a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Well, it sounds like one of the core wound patterns in your core wound map would be that how you deal with the feelings that come up from being triggered is to repress. And that's what food does. Food represses. So, so there's two parts to that, right? There's the not doing that, and then there's the processing part, right? And then changing that. So the feelings and needs list, what I'm going to share with you guys today, and you can download this sheet. So if you're not watching the video, I do have a sheet that goes along with this. And in fact, it's a sheet that I tell everyone to print multiple copies of, put them everywhere, in your bag, in your purse, on your desk, on your refrigerator, in your car, at your desk, put them everywhere, because that's what the client in this Date Your Body program was saying, like, oh my God, I love that I can just pick this up and figure it out. Because most people think, well, I got to think about it. I gotta let it come to me. Well, if it's new information, it's not just going to show
Right.
up. You have to be able to learn something new to understand how to do this. This is called the feelings and needs list. And there are 3 questions that go with this. So, so let me finish the thought on that. There are 2 parts to this. So no matter what the core wound is, no matter what the upper limit is, no matter what your astrology is, no matter what your birth order is, no matter what, there's a lot of frameworks that I use in the work that I do to make sense of things for people. In the red hot moment when you're feeling negative emotion, which means that a need is not being met. So let's just start there. If you're having a negative emotion, because you're not going to do this exercise if you're feeling good. Like, I'm feeling good. I don't need to problem solve anything. I'm good. Stay there. If you feel negative emotion, it literally means that there is a need that's not being met, or the perception, air quotes, the perception of a need not being met. So you might be getting the need met, like let's say in the case of love language. We have a husband whose love language is acts of service and a wife's whose touch. The wife is complaining and feeling bad about herself because her husband doesn't touch her, yet he is buying the groceries, he's cooking the meals, he's cleaning up the kitchen, he's putting the kids to bed. And all the while she's going, but why don't you love me? Well, he is loving you. Your perception of the need is distorted. You're not seeing all the love that's being given to you through acts of service because you're expecting it in touch. So again, the need might be getting met. You're just not receiving it. So it's not to blame anybody that some need isn't being met. Someone's not showing up for you. That's not what this means. So no matter what the core wound is, you would go back to in the red hot moment. So there are 2 parts to this. This is something you can do no matter what the framework is, no matter what your wounds are, no matter all the things I said. However, when you mentioned, like, what's the core wound? That's not something you're going to come to necessarily without some help, without some work, without a framework to figure that out. There's a whole process in figuring out your core wounds. And then I've created something called a core wound map, which helps you to understand how it all works and then how to change it. So let's go back to the feelings and needs. This is for everybody, no matter where you are on this journey, and you can use it for the rest of your life. And if you do this well, your life will change. I promise. Your relationship will change.
I'm gonna do the wave. I'm happy.
Right. Okay. So again, there's a piece of paper that I'm showing right now, and there's a top and a bottom, and the top is the feelings and the bottom is the needs. Now, under the feelings, if I ask most of you, how many feelings do you think there are? You'd probably rattle off 10, maybe 12 or 15 if you're really good, but there's 100 on here.
Oh, wow.
There's 100 different feeling words.
I was going to say 20 if I was stretching it.
100. Okay.
Wow.
And there's probably one or 2 we could take off, and probably 1 or 2 we could add. But so if you think of, well, why there are 100 feeling words? Well, under the category of mad, there's a big difference between irritated and enraged.
Yeah.
Yes. If someone says I'm irritated, you're like, okay, you're still sitting by them thinking everything's feeling good. If they say I'm enraged, you are not sitting next to them. You are moving away from them because they've just told you they have rage, which means they're going to explode or probably do something scary. Okay. But yet they're both under category of mad. So we want to fine tune the frequency, the vibration, the intensity level of these different emotions, because it gives us an understanding of what to do about it, whether it be for us or somebody else. Now, on the needs list, this does not mean needy. This does not mean weak. This does not mean dependent. These are 86 basic human needs. And we all need fun. We all need honesty. We all need freedom. We all need space. We all need air, hydration, movement, rest, shelter, touch, support, hope, learning, right? Okay, so that's some of the words on this list. All right, so question number 1. So once you print literally 10 copies of this, and if you have a child, I think this is a great exercise to do with, well, if you're not used to identifying your emotions, it's a great exercise for you to do. So like every day, not you, Richard, but anyone listening, like you print 7 of them, and in a week, every day, when you come home from work, you write the date on the top, and then you circle what you're feeling, and you stop and you like feel into, what am I feeling right now? And where do I feel it? Do I feel it in my stomach? Do I feel it in my neck? Do I feel it in my back? Do I feel it is it my head spinning? So you just start to notice, am I sweating? Is my heartbeat racing? Is my stomach in knots? Do I feel like I have to go to the bathroom? Do I feel nauseous? You start to identify to make that connection. So what am I feeling? That's the first word. That's the first question. What am I feeling? And then you choose one or two, like the hottest, most intense feelings that whatever's going on with you right now. Question number one. Question number two, what need is not being met that's creating the feeling? Do you have any examples we can use to workshop something? It could be a past example, not something you're going on with right now.
Um,
Anything you want to work out?
well, I think this is what automatically comes to mind as I think about this is my daughter, just a child. Like I'm thinking of it in terms of what's not being met anytime there's a minor outburst or something like
For
that.
her,
Yeah, but
for
I've
her
never
or for
I
you?
for her. I've never thought of it in terms though of what's not being met. I've always thought of it in terms of kind of like, well, for basics, it's like what's wrong? Did something happen? What caused this behavior? Um, versus seeing it as a tangible need, I guess you could say. But like for me, I'm trying to think if I can think of anything. Um, yeah, well, I mean, this weekend somewhere, the example I had, you know, I don't I don't know what need wasn't being met
What happened? Start with
well, somebody asked me, "What's wrong with you?" And I thought nothing was wrong with me. And so it kind of made me defensive, I guess, and standoffish as opposed to just going, but for some context, the past 2 weeks, like my father went in for knee surgery and ended up intubated in the ICU while we were on vacation. So we rushed home for that. And that was a whole ordeal and a lot of emotions. And then kind of the touch and go of that, and then trying to get him to rehab, from 45 minutes away. And so I'd kind of been doing this for like a week and a half and dealing with all this. And then it was like finally time where it was my wife, myself, and my daughter go out for kind of a family day. And it's like, hey, what's wrong with you? Um, and I don't know why that just set me off. And it put me
okay.
out for probably a day, day and a half of like trying to figure out what was wrong. All I could chalk it up to was maybe all the stress of everything that happened, thinking like my father was going to pass away and all that would entail for that, because yes, there's the physical piece, but then there's a whole other world of things that have to happen when somebody passes away. Um,
So it sounds like, so let me use a list. It
mhm,
sounds like you were scared,
definitely.
sad,
Yes.
and worried.
Yes, absolutely.
And then when the person asked you what was wrong with you, you were probably a little frustrated
Yeah. Well, and
because you had gone through all of that, and then you finally were like, oh, okay, I'm here, and now you're asking what's wrong, which is like, okay, not another thing. And then it sort of brought up all of the emotions that you were sort of tabling while you were going out to celebrate with your wife and your daughter. And it sounds like that the need, so let me go through the questions.
mhm,
Feelings we have. So again, a little bit of sadness for sure that maybe you hadn't expressed because you were in um, the fight or flight of it, right? You're in the adrenaline piece of it. So there wasn't space to really be sad yet necessarily. When we had the first coyote that ever jumped into our yard, which hasn't been many, there's only been two in the 3 years I've been here, but the first one that did, I had cats outside and my partner's son was here and he said, there's a coyote in the yard. And I went, oh, holy, and I, in my robe and my slippers, ran after that coyote down. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got to him. I just ran and I'm screaming and the coyote jumped over the yard. I came back and I cried, like instantly cried because I was so scared. But in the moment of doing it, I wasn't scared because I was trying to protect my children, my fur
Right.
babies, right? And so I was in the adrenaline of chasing this coyote. But then once the coyote was gone and the threat was gone, I broke down into tears because I was so scared.
Well, and I
So
was on an adrenaline dump for all that time because when we were on vacation and I came up, I didn't sleep all night and then went to the hospital first thing when ICU hours opened and my sleep was all off. And, so I think I probably had a similar, because I was just thinking of all the things, all the different things that could happen and how, what would be required of me if this happened.
right. So the person saying something was kind of the mirror, which was irritating. Um, because you wanted to sort of just be in a moment where you could disconnect from all of that. You
Yeah,
didn't
because I didn't
necessarily
feel like anything was wrong. In a way, I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I felt like, and it's funny you say mirror because I go, you're putting these feelings on me. You're projecting that on me. Like, I'm fine. But
possibly, but if you were fine, then it wouldn't have bothered you.
that's right.
I agree that there are times where someone might say to you, "What's wrong?" and you'd be like, "Nothing."
But maybe I
Um,
just wanted to disconnect, or maybe I'm kind of, being only after you're podcasting, am I getting more vulnerable, or it's getting easier to be vulnerable, I guess you could say.
yeah,
But sometimes in my day-to-day relationships, it can, in person, it can still be difficult, maybe
of
to
course.
admit.
Well, right, because there's probably shame attached to that for some reason, for whatever reason, right? Whether being a man or, and it doesn't really matter why right now. For this exercise though, it's just acknowledging the truth of that you're probably sad, worried, and frustrated, and then move to, well, what need is not being met. And it sounds like, looking at the list, which I always will do for other people as well as for myself, because there's so many words on here. One day you're going to find a word you didn't even know you needed. It happened to me. I'm like, what? I didn't even know I needed that. Boy, that felt really great to figure that out. Okay, I think you need some ease and some peace and some fun and possibly some space.
And I ended up taking space only through a wrong avenue, I guess you could say, with that funk on me, as opposed to, I kind of isolated in the office here where I do the podcast and I have a little bed and a chair and I spent the night in here as opposed to sleeping, in my own bed. Um, but there's a piece of me that when I think about this, I think of, um, I'm not asking anyone to solve anything. I don't, maybe I felt like I just needed love, or to feel like, hey, it's to be told it's okay to feel this way. I
Did,
understand, and that's okay. And just
so
give me
did
a hug.
so under authenticity, there's to be seen and heard, to be known and known. I feel like there's possibly support under there.
Yeah.
Um, there's also mourning. Not that anyone's dead yet, but
I
and
felt antagonized when somebody goes like, well, what's wrong with you? And then you don't get the love part back, or that's the part that was missing. I felt like you're just antagonizing me. Like,
right.
as a,
But again, if it wasn't true, then you wouldn't have responded negatively. So it becomes the mirror to
Mhm.
be, because you have said before that that we've determined based on what your conversation has been, like a core wound, that your core wound pattern is to repress or to run away, right?
Yeah.
and and there's no judgment on that. That's what you've done. So this is, so in that moment, part of wanting to sort of change gears is, I'm going to go out with my family and I'm going to forget and disconnect from everything that's been stressing me out. But I don't know that we actually can do that quite as easily as you think we can. So you're carrying all that stuff with you, and someone else noticed it and they said it, and then you didn't want to deal with it, which is what was agitating about it, and then decided, and then it triggered you, it got you upset. Because if someone can say, so I don't, obviously Richard, this is our first time meeting, but if I was to say to you, you know what, you seem like a very uncaring person. Like, would you even for one half of a second think that, like, take that negatively?
Mm, I probably would a little, because I think I'm the total opposite of uncaring. I find myself to be a kind, caring, and compassionate person who worked in healthcare for 12 years, whose total mission is to serve people. And part of the podcast is serving people, it's still who I am, only a larger audience. I can affect more people through a podcast than I ever could managing 2 clinics. So yeah, it would offend me.
Yo, word up. This is Ethan from the Nonchalant Perfectionist podcast. I'm so glad you tuned in here, man. Hold on, just real quick. Did you know that this podcast, as well as my own, are part of a much larger world called the Podcast Connection Network? Yeah. Yeah, we have some pretty amazing shows hosted by even more amazing souls. And look, we're just waiting to be discovered. You curious? Yeah, I know you are. Head over to the link in the description below. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
Okay. That's because there's a wound that believes that that might be true. I was trying to find a wound that wasn't true. Like, for instance, if someone would say to me, JJ, you're pretty like boring and you don't really have any life, or, you're pretty, like, you're not very direct. Like, if you would say the opposite of what I know to be true about me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, do you know me? Like, it wouldn't bother me because I know it so deeply. Now, if someone says something that you might or fear might have some truth to it, that's what the wound is. That's what the trigger is, because we have a part of us that doesn't really believe that. I think you present very caring, which is why I chose that one, because I thought for sure you'd be like, no, I'm very caring. So anyway, but in this situation, let's look at the need real quick, because it's the third question. So the first was, what am I feeling? The second is, what need is not being met? That's creating the feeling. And the need could have been consideration, but you can't shoot the messenger. Okay. We're not talking about the person. The consideration is about you. The step 3 is what strategies, more than one, can I take to get the need met that do not require anyone else to be different? Let me say that again. What strategies can I take to, more than one choice, to get the need met that does not require anyone else to be different? So here's where this is for you. In the moment that someone frustrates you and you realize that, well, is this true? Is this true that there is something wrong with me? Yes, but I was hoping to not deal with it right now. Maybe the need is for space. Maybe up until now, there's been a pattern of dealing with emotion or not dealing with emotion. Obviously, it has served you as much as it served you, but maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a way that says, you know what, because I've heard you say you tend to isolate. Yeah, you're a guy. Hello. That's what guys do.
Well, and that's what we did. We were supposed to go eat, and I was like, I don't want to be around people, because we were like at a arcade Dave and Buster's type of place. And I was like, when it happened, I was like, do you want to go eat? And I'm like, no, I don't want to be around anyone. I want to go home. And then I came straight to my room.
But could you have potentially, and that's getting your need met, but could you have maybe like taken a walk or a reset or done a state change where you just took a couple deep breaths, went outside, did something, whatever, went to the bathroom? Like, for me, it's like, if I have to be in a situation and this happened at a workshop, I got really upset about an ex-boyfriend, and the anger was rising, and I had a friend, and I said, come with me. We went to the bathroom, and I picked up there was a couch in the bathroom, and I picked up the seat part of it. I said, hold this. I'm going to kick it and I'm going to punch it. And I started doing some kickboxing, and I started punching it, and I let out sound. And on the third time I punched it, I cried. And then the tears came out. I figured out what I needed. I felt relief, and I was done. I was good. I went back to this, and then I was totally present, because I let the anger move through me, but I got it solved. I used this process, but I let out the anger because I was mad, and I wasn't going to be able to, when you're mad, you can't think of anything else. It's just swirling, but you can't keep it inside. If you keep it inside, you are not present anymore for anybody. So being able to say, I have a need for space right now. Look, hey, guys, I love you, and I'm so wanting to have a good time today, but right now I'm triggered big time. And I'm so triggered, I can't even think straight. So in order for me to be present with you, I have a need for some space so I can kind of reset and let this go so I can come back. Would that be okay for you that I take 15 minutes to take a quick walk so I can clear my head and sort of get myself back into my body? And if that's not okay, then can we reschedule and come back another time? Right? That would have been a strategy to get your need met, would be to ask for space.
You never get what you don't ask for. And that's part of that man thing, is we don't like to ask for help. And maybe we don't like to ask for what we need.
Nobody, it's not just a man thing.
Okay.
It's women. Women don't ask for what they need. Women don't know what they need. Most people don't know what they need.
And
this is the problem.
That? Can I get my wife to hear that? No, I'm just kidding.
No, most people don't know what they need. Well, have her listen to the show.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when we don't know how to get our own needs met, we manipulate others to try to get our needs met unconsciously, and we don't know why we're doing it. If we don't know how to get our needs met, we're totally like testing things out with people. We're trying things. We're literally being manipulative of other people until we feel whatever we're trying to feel, which we're unconscious of because we haven't taken ownership of it. It's the reason why women are horribly manipulative of men. And it's the reason why men, I love you all. I want you to grow some cojones here with women, because the reason why they can manipulate you is because you never speak up and ask for what you need. And it becomes this power struggle. And you're also not you, but some men are very uncomfortable with emotion. So if a woman's crying, women use crying as manipulation all the time. Why? Because it works. If it stopped working, they'd stop using it. I'm not saying that authentically
Right.
crying
Yeah.
is not a good thing. It is a good thing, but it's been turned into a manipulation between men and women because women know. And again, it's subconscious because you know it works. If you cry, a man will go, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I got to stop doing?" Like, it's an instant behavioral change. That is power.
Or we
So
go
of
into
course,
fix and please.
right. And that, so men, you got to grow some. You got to be okay. You got to be uncomfortable with emotion. You got to be uncomfortable with someone else's emotion, and
Yeah.
vice versa. Women too. My mother has been threatening my dad for years about putting a table together or fixing something in the house, or this kitchen project that's been going on for 40 years. And I said, "Mother, you can't blame him anymore. You know how to use the phone. You know you're the one that writes the checks. Call somebody to do it." "Oh no, your dad would be upset." "So what? You've given him 40 years to do it." Like, again, it's this concept, but we stay stuck in this ridiculousness. So that's why I really love promoting this work. This originally comes from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote Nonviolent Communication. I teach it differently than they do. They really want you to do this for other people first. And I don't think that if you can't identify it in yourself, you're not going to know how to identify it in somebody else. So I want people to take response. Not to mention, I've tested it. I've tested in rooms full of people, bringing the same trainers I learned from into different rooms and watching everybody else be thoroughly confused. And I'm like, what's the problem? What are they not understanding? It's because my brain rearranged all of this when I first learned it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a great way for all of us to learn how to get our feelings and needs met so we can feel better and move on and stop being stuck in whatever pattern or habit or negative emotion we're in. So the link for this is not, you cannot find this on my website. I only share it privately when I teach it, because you
Okay.
wouldn't know what to do with it if I gave it away for free without explaining it. So it's jjflizanes.com. JJFLIZANES.com/feelings list. So with an S, feelings list. That is where you can download your free copy. And I think it also comes with the questions, the 1, 2, and 3. But what is my feeling? What is the need that's not being met that's creating the feeling? And most importantly, what strategies, more than one? You cannot go to someone and say, "I feel this way," and you have to. If the word "you" at all appears in the strategy, you are not taking ownership of this. You cannot have the word "you." You can ask for help. You can say, "I'm feeling sad and I feel like I'd like a hug. Would you be willing to give me a hug?" But then if that person says no, then you got to find somebody else to give you a hug. You can't give the responsibility to one person to make you feel better. That's not their job. That's your job.
I can't remember if you mentioned it. What made you pursue that class, or to get the list, or learn this to go into it?
I had two things. One was my divorce, but it was
Okay.
really my marriage, trying to save my marriage. So I started my podcast to save my marriage. And while it wasn't supposed to be saved, I was supposed to learn all this. So it was the
Right.
perfect ground for me. It was a perfect reason for me to be extremely focused for 10 years on, and to change and to grow myself into the best version of myself. And then now I get to help other people and save their marriages. So because mine wasn't supposed to be, I was supposed to elevate myself to a different level. It was the perfect contract. Everything was perfect in the way that it happened and the way that it ended and when it did. I wouldn't change a second of it, even though it wasn't all, roses
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
balloons. Of course, it was very hard, but it was the best lesson and the best way to focus and learn all this stuff.
I feel the same way about being laid off from a corporate job. And it took me a long time to realize, kind of like, if you go through a divorce or a breakup, you forgive the other person for yourself so you can move forward. And then I started looking like, oh my gosh, like, look at all the different things I learned and all the interviews I did. And it's going right into podcasting and project management teams I was on. And yeah, and I had always thought like I go from like practice manager to director to VP or something. And you know what? And I go, if I had made director, I'd have been making more money. I'd have probably felt more obligated to go back to that career path instead of taking a chance of what really fulfills me and podcasting, um, getting other messages and people's stories out there so they can be better, so they can improve their lives, improve their marriage, whatever it is. But really, too, it really all starts with self. You have to be aware enough, or let me change that. You have to want to be aware enough. You have to want to figure out about yourself. And, sometimes I feel like nobody would want to be in my brain because it is wild. Um, but what is it that makes me want to continuously kind of pursue that? Because these kinds of things, emotion, brain stuff has been an interest for mine since I was younger. I can remember buying the big book of brain, which I had and eventually got rid of once I was done with it. But yeah, I believe it starts with self. Like you have to want to do it for yourself. And so it's interesting that you said it was kind of started off about your marriage, but then it really ended up about you, and kind of podcasting for me was the same thing. It was kind of this personal journal and about dealing with all that. And it was actually in one of the podcast episodes you can hear where I realized, hey, I need to forgive. I need to move on. And I'm actually thankful for all the stuff it taught me, you know?
Yeah. Well, we can look at life as a series of mistakes or a series of lessons.
Oh. Let's talk a little bit about, the law of attraction and core wounds, success in business, how they kind of relate. And with this and figuring out kind of your core wound, and how does it keep you from, let's say, manifesting whatever it is you want? Or like, and do these emotional states need to be in a certain place when you're desiring to, let's say, manifest, visualize, whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, first of all, your core wounds, as we previously discussed, were kind of set into motion between 3 months before you were born into 7. And these themes, though, because you don't know what they are unless
Okay.
you spend some time and get some help to figure them out. So, I mean, some people can guess, we can guess, but really it pays to focus on them. Like, for instance, if one of your parents left you, okay, you can probably agree that you felt abandoned, right? Like that's
Yeah.
probably a theme, right? But the rest of them, if you had sort of a normal childhood, otherwise, you might have been emotionally abandoned, but maybe you don't know that term because your parents were always there, or maybe you were smothered. But
I'm
whatever
defective. I feel defective because I was always told, like, you're too little to do this. Like, you grew up with
yep,
asthma, you were premature, you're not capable, you'll never be able to do this because of X, Y, Z.
right. So if that's the belief, that's pretty embedded, and even when well, I shouldn't say that. Your conscious mind, the 5 to 12% of your conscious mind, which can decide on something, it's your wishes and dreams and desires. You can, if you do it enough, if you challenge that belief enough, it can wear down. But what happens sometimes is we go so far, and then what happens, the subconscious wants to prove us right. So it proves us right for whatever we believe. We say, "Up, see, couldn't do that. I knew it." So we keep strengthening that belief. So when it comes to core wounds, you want to identify. What I help with people do is identify like the top 3 core wounds, and then I created something called a core wound map, and it really just gives you all the information very quickly in a very organized fashion, so that you know what to do. You understand the circuit that happens when you get triggered, so you can start to be an observer and be conscious and go, interesting, versus being in it. You can
Yeah.
sort of step back from it and like notice it, and that's when you have some power to change it. But then also understand, like, if you have a devalued, if you're and I'm not good enough, then when you get to business, are you going to charge what you're worth, or are you going to be doing stuff for free? Are you going to be performing for love and begging people to hire you, or are you going to be confident and attract? Because that's the difference. Law of attraction is not about what you say. We just did some vision boards up at the event, and I actually got 5 minutes in front of the room. because I said, are you guys going to do anything with the vision boards? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, missed opportunity. So they invited me to speak for 5 minutes about vision boards, because a vision board is the equivalent of a treadmill or a weight machine that you have that you never use. If
Yeah.
it's sitting there and you're not using it, it can't help you, right? It's about the frequency. It's about the feeling. And more importantly, it's about the belief. So you manifest what you believe. And if part of your conscious brain, I just did a solo show actually on my show today that I recorded yesterday. And I was talking about the story that I've told a million times on my show about an ex-boyfriend. And I had this fear. Well, let me start over. I had this behavior. I noticed that I was feverishly buying him things, teddy bears, putting pictures in frames, writing him poetry, which he did and I didn't. But I was like, well, I can write poetry too. So I was doing all these, like buying all these gifts. And gifts are not my first love language. They're not even my third. They're probably my last. And I thought to myself, JJ, why are you doing this? Like, it looks like from the outside that you think he's going to forget you. Like, you're trying to make sure he remembers you long after you guys are not together anymore. And my conscious brain said, no, that's ridiculous, because he got rid of all of his ex-girlfriend stuff before me, the one his best, favorite, most important ex-girlfriend. He's already told me that I made the top of the list. Like, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't believe that. And then I was doing some binaural beats in a meditation one afternoon, and the same words went across my forehead in my brain. It said, are you afraid he's going to forget you? And something tapped down, came back up, and I started to cry. And I was like, oh my God, I believe that. And that's what people don't understand, is that you have beliefs that you're not even aware that you have, that that literally live in the body. But you know how you can tell? By your behavior. Like the conscious part of me that observed my behavior knew it. I said, JJ, why are you doing this? Why are you doing, like, you're literally acting crazy. But I defended myself. Oh, no, I don't believe that. And I gave all the logical reasons, but my body and my subconscious 100% believed that. And it was a moment of awareness that I was like, wow, okay, these subconscious beliefs you can see them in your life. You can see how you do them. And once you start to see them, now we can depower them. Now we can replace them, but we first have to see them. We first have to, and then we have to face them. So to me, if you don't know your core wounds, then there's a whole operating system in your brain that you are not aware of that will sabotage you no matter what you want, whether it be a relationship. Now, some programs that were installed in you are going to be good ones. Relationships might be one of them. You're great at relationships, but maybe not money. Or you're really great at money, but maybe not health or relationships. So there's usually one area where most people believe because they had good modeling and good programming there, but then there are other aspects of life where you didn't. And even though you may learn and try, something might sabotage you. And that's
It's just
why.
something as simple as I can remember, like, if you grow up thinking that every rich person is crooked,
Yeah.
or that people who have money don't do anything good with it, yeah, it impacts you. And the hard part of it is I think that one of the things that's really challenged me, and I love my parents. I was just a product of a different era, late 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was just different, but I don't even think parents realize they're putting all this on you.
Oh,
They
of course
just
not,
say
because
it.
they have their own wounds.
Yeah, they just say it because either that's what they believe, that's what somebody told them, that's what their core friend group believes. Yeah, and so I can trace back. I'm learning as I'm going through this process, and the past year of learning about myself and whatnot. I'm seeing all these things and how they've kind of manifested in my life, but through not necessarily the way I want. And I'm trying to shift that, because, I'm tired of, whether it's low self-worth or something, following me around for 30 years or 40 years,
Yeah. Well, that's why, I've taught law of attraction for a long time. And if people haven't learned it from me and they learn it just from someone else, they think, oh, well, that doesn't work because a vision board or affirmations or just feeling positive or just thinking positive isn't enough. And in a way, it's true, because because you can attract something, you can feel good and attract something at a different level. But if your subconscious and belief system doesn't allow it in, you'll sabotage it. That's called an upper limit. So maybe I can get to the frequency of what I want, and maybe it starts to come to me, and then I panic because I don't actually believe I deserve it, or that I can handle it, or that I've worked for it, or whatever. So then I sabotage it. So to me, it's very like the core wound work and diving into yourself. To me, as a business owner, podcast coach, and business coach, I think everybody needs this because it's going to help you excel in all areas of your life. And why would you want to have the surprise of, or why, some people, the reason why I started my mastermind was because I couldn't find a coach who was doing it all the ways I needed it to be done. I believe that everything is equal: health, relationships, and money. And I saw a lot of people putting money ahead of relationships and health. And I thought, nope, that's not what I want. And then there's the spirituality, law of attraction piece that I had to add in there. So I was like, I couldn't find anybody who was doing what I wanted. So I had to do it. So I created it. But yeah, so I think it's an important conversation, especially when people have exhausted. Because some people, I had a whole group of podcasting clients who we were in a mastermind, and most of them came for the business.
Right.
I hadn't earned the right. They didn't listen to my show. Some of them did, but most of them had just started. And so they were, they wanted the tricks and the gadgets and the gizmos and the websites and the plugins and all the things to make them a successful podcaster. But every single one of them, what was stopping them was them. But nobody wanted to do that work. So I decided, all right, I don't want to do this anymore, because not with podcasters, or not with people who aren't ready. Because yeah, even in my own community, I made an announcement last year. I said, no one can come into the mastermind who hasn't already done the emotional work, because I believe and know and trust this is the most important thing. Yes, we're going to get to the lead magnets and the funnels and like all the things, but you have to have a combination of both at all times, because every new level of growth in whatever area, health, relationships, and money, every new level of growth provides another bit of like contrast of an upper limit for you to overcome.
I
And
always
that's
say,
never going to stop.
once you reach the level you're striving for, then the real work begins.
Yep.
It's like I worked hard for my master's, then your master's is gone. You're like, oh, I can finally breathe. But then other stuff comes along, hey, can you join this committee? Can you manage this? Can you do that? Can you take on extra this? And yeah. Because then it's almost like too, you I wouldn't say necessarily mastered, but you've comprehended a group of material that now you can start putting into practice and taking that theory and moving it into action to get results. And that's the hard part. And sometimes it takes trial and error, and it's definitely even harder, I would say, like in the self-improvement, self-development world, because you're dealing with emotions. It's not, it's not like just trying a process in a work environment or seeing if this form works better or this machine works better. There's so many variables when it comes to human emotion and behavior.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But that's why I offered that topic, because too many people are thinking manifestation is something you can just turn on. It's happening every day, all day long. First of all, you can't ever not manifest. It's a difference of, are you manifesting what you want versus what you don't want? But what's coming to you all the time, every time, is what you believe. So in order to change what's coming to you, you have to change what you believe.
Oh man, that's so that's kind of how you teach it differently. And let me see. So the connection between core wounds and manifestation is you definitely need to identify the core wounds before you kind of start, because the core wounds are basically, they design your belief system, and then you're going to have to change that in order to kind of manifest the things you want versus stop manifesting the things you don't want. Like I was told, I have trouble because of low self-worth. I don't like to accept compliments. And, somebody said, well, when you don't accept compliments, it's almost like you're rejecting abundance. And I was like, oh, yeah. So let me see. I'm kind of looking at, for those of you who can't see, there's a little silence because I'm looking at some of the questions from an outline I have. What would you say are the most important emotions that are kind of part of healing? Like, where do you, if somebody wants to start, like, what's the first things to look at? Like, if you're just coming in ground zero, because I know, like, for me, whenever I kind of started on a healing journey, you know, it was kind of trial and error type of things, and starting to put little pieces together. And you had mentioned earlier, like, you know, I think it's what you can't slay all your dragons at one time. So you kind of got to start one area. But so how do you direct people when they come to you? If I were to come to you and say, hey, I think I'm a little broken. I need to figure some things out.
Yeah.
And where would you start?
Well, everybody's gotten the link for the feelings and needs list. And that's
Hmm.
something you can do right now if you understand the concept. And you can also just re-listen to this podcast if it didn't land the first time, or just that section where we talked about the feelings and needs list, a step 1, step 2, step 3. Take some notes and you can start there, because self-awareness is the number one place to start. If you're not self-aware, then then the rest of the work is not going to land. And then I have a 90-minute class. It's free. It's on my website.
Hmm.
Well, I'll mention 2 of them. Well, actually, I mentioned 3 of them. There's 3. There's plain as day on the homepage. The first one is the 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective. Now, if you're a therapist or you love your therapist and you are different in the same situation, which means you're
Hmm.
not avoiding people, you didn't move, quit your job, get a divorce, like that's not the strategy. Like you're in the same situation with the same person and you're responding differently, then no problem. There are a lot of decent therapists out there that use other things and just talk therapy. But the model of general talk therapy is excruciatingly ineffective. And I talk about why on this 90-minute free class that you can
Hmm.
watch. So you just go to my homepage and it's there. If you are dealing with health diagnosis and you're trying all the medical things and even alternative medicine things and they're not working, most likely the emotion is the root. Well, the emotion is root for everything because it has to be invisible before it's visible. But I did a class called how emotions affect healing and disease. And that's another 90-minute class that's free on my site. And then the one I'll mention for you, I thought, oh, maybe I won't, but for anyone who's listening, it's the 3 fastest ways to make money podcasting. So,
Ah,
we went to a different direction here. It's business. And
yeah.
that's on the site too. So if you're brand new, I'd watch either the 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective. And then I also teach this feelings and needs list there too, but you've heard it already.
Yeah.
So you can get another refresher. And then I kind of go through why. And then it's about creating your roadmap, because everyone's is going to be different. So it's the diagnostic piece. If you just say, I don't feel good and I want more out of life. Okay, great. So does everybody else. What specifically do you
Yeah.
want? What have you tried? And what tools are you using? If you have no tools and you have no idea, it would be best to create a roadmap. Now, I've created a course called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing. Anyone can buy it and do it on your own time. I will never need to see you. It's already done. It's a self-study course. And the roadmap just sort of sets up the components along with the core wounds. It does
Hmm.
go through the core wound exercise, but I have made it better since then. But at least gives you the bottom line of the core wound patterns. And then from there, you can make decisions, because until you understand what your core wounds are, it's like going to the doctor and just saying, I don't feel well. They got to start somewhere. They're going to run some tests and then they're going to like hone in on something to make a treatment plan. Well, it's the same thing here emotionally. If you're just going in and talking about why you don't feel well and you're talking about what happened yesterday with your spouse, are we ever understanding the root of the
Right.
belief that got you here in the first place? Like, let's circumvent this very long process of telling stories
Hmm.
and tell one story back in the beginning to uncover what the wounds are. And then from there, you're going to make decisions about what to do for your healing, because for some people, it's going to be very different than others. And that's where it's not a one size fits all. There are all kinds of tools out there that people can use, but what the best tool is for you will be determined by your core wounds.
When you were saying, it's interesting, like hey, I want to feel better. I want more out of life. Yeah, it's not very specific, and kind of like when you identify your emotions, which is something I've worked on for the past year, is like, what exactly do I feel and why? But um, with visualization, kind of the same way when you're trying to identify a core wound so you can move past an emotion or change your life, you have to get down to the detail. With manifestation, is it the same way? You don't want to just manifest something general like, oh, I want more money. Um, should it be very specific?
It just depends, because if you're specific and you don't believe it, you won't get it.
Oh.
So for some people, being more general. So let me also add one more, I guess, thing people can do depending on when you're going
Mhm.
to publish this episode. I run a 14-day free manifestation challenge, and I give you all the tools. You have support for 14 days, and the next one is November 1st. So depending on when this episode
Before
airs.
then,
Okay.
yeah,
So no,
there maybe only 3 away, like, or no, there might only be 2, so you might be. I release 2 a week, and I think there's only 2 ahead of you.
Okay. All right. Am I doing
But
anything else free
soon.
right now? No. So that is the next free thing. My podcast is free and I have a ton of information there. And I have a whole network of podcasts, but the 14-day manifestation challenge, it's jjflizanes.com/14-day 14, the numbers 14 DAY. And that's free. We're doing that November 1st is the next one. It's the last one of this year. And there's a ton of information. I mean, there's videos, there's support, there's handouts, there's meditations, there's clearings, and that can get you started to help you identify how to get to a better feeling. And then the more you spend time in that better feeling, the easier it is to be an observer of your life and to start to see some of these patterns. The core wound exercise isn't free because I mean, it goes with the course or it goes
Right.
with doing a longer committed thing with me. But the free things that I do have to offer you would be all the classes, the podcast, the list, the feelings and needs list, which could be life changing, and then the 14-day manifestation challenge.
Yeah, because I think, when you broke out the feelings and need list, when 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 I was going through change and my my typical response was to run away always for 25, 30 years. So making that decision to sit in the discomfort was the first choice. But kind of like that list, I had no idea it existed. It was really about trying to identify what exactly am I feeling and why do I feel it, as opposed to making it more general. And yeah, and so it's awesome to kind of see that list because I feel like you said, you could leave it somewhere and anytime you're triggered, you go, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? Because I think having at least like some options, it's easier to kind of point out versus like, let's say when I got triggered at the arcade, if I had just had that list and been like, ah, maybe it would have went a little bit smoother as opposed to taking a day and a half of isolation and, you know, acting like a butthole to not figure it out.
Well, so before like sitting in it, that's step one. That's what am I feeling? But what most of us do is we go, what am I feeling and why? But then the story of the why becomes a blame on the situation or another person. And this is where that's detrimental because you want to blame it on the guy that said, how are you feeling or what's wrong with you? You were already in a negative state, but you were trying to ignore it because you were like focused on the survival piece and then like wanting to get through it and then have a little bit of space and some rest and some peace away from being in that. So, you wanted to shoot the messenger, which is normal, but that's the downside of not having this to take responsibility for your needs. Because regardless of the situation, let's say that guy never even showed up. Maybe it would have been your wife. Maybe later that evening, she would have said something to you like, hey, are you okay? And that would have triggered you because no, you weren't okay. And you needed to take some space to allow your feelings to process, to allow yourself to come back to center, regardless of who it was that brought it to you, to your attention.
Right.
Or it would have been a physical experience. It could have been a stomach ache. It could have been a headache. It could have been getting sick or hurt. It could have been getting the flu, whatever. Like stress builds up and people get sick because when they hold the adrenaline for so long and then your body goes into, breakdown mode and now you're sick after holding stress for so long. And that's just what happens because your immune system is really compromised when you're in stress because your cortisol is all over the place. It's super high. And then of course you have to crash because you've used all of it for like however many days you've been in that cortisol spike, right? So having this will help take the pressure or blame off of anybody else and will feel really empowering when you can discover and figure out what your own need is. Cause it's not about anybody else. It's not about your need. Your environment is just showing you what the need is. It's not the environment's fault. You have a need. Now it's your job to then figure out how to get the need met. And when that can be without blame, when that can be said, because I'm sure when you withdraw or run away and you don't tell anybody what's going on, they're worried, they're frustrated, they're taking it personally. But the minute you can say, hey, I'm really triggered right now. I am sad, I'm frustrated, and I'm worried and it's all kind of just bottled up inside of me and I don't want it. I'm just not in a place right now. Can I take some space? I need some space. So here are the choices. I'm going to take some space right now. Can you give me 15 minutes to go away and then come back to reset and to allow myself to feel these feelings? Or can we just do this another day? Those are the two choices for the family when I'm in this triggered moment. Because then the other choices, and you can say, or we can stay, third choice, we can stay. I just can't guarantee you that I'm going to have a good time or be present because I
Yeah.
have too much emotion going on inside of me right now.
Man, I love that. I don't know that I fully intended for uh my own story to come up in the podcast, but part of it is I can't ask others to be vulnerable or encourage them so they can get better and heal from whatever it is they are unless I do it myself and kind of be the example. And that's why I choose to kind of be so open about it. Um, Even if, it makes me, after a year, I feel a lot less shame or embarrassment about some of the things I've done. I understand that I've done bad things in the past, but it doesn't make me a bad person. Um, they're just character mishaps or lapses in judgment,
Or
um,
learnings.
yes, learnings. So you're an empowerment strategist. That's your is that your official title?
Yes,
Now, is that something I've never heard of it? Is there certifications or anything for that?
there
Or is
is,
it
but I've made them. So it's
okay?
mine.
And like you said, it's all about kind of getting people to accept responsibility for themselves, their
With love,
actions with
with
love,
love and acceptance, not with shame.
understanding that happiness or healing is an inside job.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how do you um one thing I feel often, and maybe other people do, but how do you empower people through shame?
Well, we uncover what's the story that's creating the shame.
Okay.
Because I'm going to say that 95% of the stories that we tell ourselves are not true. So whatever shame story you got going on, it's not even true. So we have to bring things into the light in order to heal them and let them go. And then we realize that other people have the same story and theirs isn't true either. Again, because there's more than one perspective and there's more than one frequency for everything that happens. There's more than one way to look at something. So bringing it out into the light, I'm not saying don't have shame. If you have shame, you have shame. We've all had shame about different things. That's why I did this Date Your Body course, because people have body shame. And that's a pretty common thing, regardless of whatever people are doing in the group. Everybody's doing something different. But in terms of what they need to do for their specific core wounds or wherever they are. And we just started. So, I mean, I'm continuing to build the program as I fly the plane.
Yeah.
But I'd say love and acceptance are the first places you have to start. And again, I've got a ton of tools on the podcast. So many people come. In fact, there's somebody in the group right now. She's been listening since 2017. So what's 7 years ago? And this
Yeah.
is the first thing she's done with me. And she has said my podcast has changed her life. So again, I'm just giving tools. Here are the tools, but you have to use them. You have to desire to feel good enough to change the habit, to use the tool in your life so that you can feel the benefit of using the tool by feeling happier, more peaceful, have better relationships, and then being able to identify and then get some help where you need some help.
Awesome. Well, I don't I know I personally got a lot out of this, and I'm excited to check out the videos and other things. Um, and I hope the audience shares that enthusiasm because, I would hope everyone who listens to my podcast wants to improve their life in some way or get past something or, just take that take that leap of faith and go for what they really want. Because, over here I've talked about it. We understand that life is short. It can be chicken today and feathers tomorrow. Um, we all get the same end. So there's no point in wasting it on stuff you don't want, things that aren't important. It's about finding alignment, trying to be the best version of yourself, and then, put that out into the world so we can all be better together.
Definitely.
Is there one thing you want to leave? You have any questions for me, or do you want to leave the audience with anything before we hop off? A famous last saying? Do you have any quotes or something that's kind of a go-to
Yeah,
mantra?
healing. My quotes are healing is when you're different in the same situation. So
Oh,
if you think
I love
fleeing
it.
or avoiding changes who you are, it doesn't. So that's how you'll know when it's working, is when you can respond differently because you've interpreted differently. And now you feel differently in the same exact situation. Doesn't mean you need to stay in the situation for a long time. Just means that leaving it because you take you with you. You didn't
Yeah.
change you. You attracted it for a reason. You got to change you. The work is on the inside, not the outside.
You can imagine me slapping myself from living in 14 or 15 different places, and I'm 48, just now feeling like I'm maybe grasping things a little bit. Say, JJ, where were you like 15 years ago when I needed you?
Learning all this.
But of course, I didn't know I needed it at the time. I was too busy.
Right.
Um,
And you wouldn't be able to receive it.
yeah, fight or
Yeah.
flight.
No, there's no mistakes. There are no mistakes. There's only lessons.
Well, this has been great, and thank you for everything. Like I said, I've learned a lot. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm excited to go check out some stuff. So
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. I
Awesome.
hope everybody else enjoyed it also. Please follow one of the tools I sent you. Like if you are interested in trying them on.
yeah, I'm excited, and I'll touch base with you and let you know. Because I'm definitely going to do some of them and watch the videos. But yeah, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Let's go.